Good evening and welcome to Age Proof Your Career Q&A Part 1. My name is Janae Wheeler and I'll be your host this evening. I'm delighted to be joined this evening by Heather Tinsley-Fix, Senior Advisor at AARP, and Lori McCann, Senior Attorney with AARP Foundation Litigation. Welcome, Heather and Lori.
Thank you, Janae.
Thank you.
As an experienced worker, you have years of expertise and advanced skills to offer. Whether you're searching for a new job, looking to advance your company, or deciding to change careers, it's important to showcase your skills and experience through all aspects of your job search and career. During this week's two-part Q&A, we'll provide simple tips and answer your questions about how you can age-proof your career. Tonight, we'll focus on a variety of topics, such as the importance of developing new skills and staying current on new technologies, certifications and other career enhancements, resumes and cover letters, utilizing social media to connect with past, present, and potential colleagues, and navigating job search boards, career fairs, and other resources. You can ask a question at any time about how you can age-proof your career. Just type your question in the Q&A box on your screen. We want to begin with a quick poll question. Have you ever felt limited in competing for jobs because of your age? Yes or no? I'll give you a moment to answer. While you do, ladies, tell me, have you known anyone who's ever felt limited in competing for jobs?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question. My dad, who was in the Navy for over 25 years, and he retired as a Navy captain, he had a ton of great skills that went along with that, but it still took him over a year to find another job, and it was very dispiriting. So I definitely know that a lot of that was probably due to his age.
Wow. The same for me. My husband lost his job when he was over 50, and I warned him that it would probably take at least 6 months to find another job that had been my experience as an age discrimination attorney, and sure enough, it did take at least that long.
Look at that. And it looks like our attendees are echoing the same sentiments. Over 79% of you all agree that you felt limited in competing for jobs because of your age. Thank you for sharing. An important step in your job search is age-proofing your resume. So let's watch a short video to learn more. And since it's really important in order to age-proof your resume, we know there's certain tactics that you can employ. There are these various tactics that you can utilize. And right. Heather, can you share some of them with us?
Sure. There's a couple of things that you can do to make sure that your resume is age-proof. The first thing is to not list too much experience. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but stick to probably the last 10 to 15 years of your job history. Going along with that, make sure your resume is no longer than 2 pages. That's really important. Another thing that you may not occur to you is make sure that you have a modern email address. So Hotmail and AOL are definitely older email address or older email servers. So a Gmail account is great, or an Apple account is a great email address to have, and that signals that you're staying current. And then lastly, I would say you definitely want to make sure with each resume that you use when you apply for jobs to list the skills that you have that relate to the skills in the job description. And you want to make sure that's a one-to-one match because first, it shows that you have the skills that the job is looking for. And also, Janae, as you know, it's really important to be able to get your resume past those applicant tracking systems, which you guys may have heard of. So that it's important for that reason as well.
Excellent. I'm glad that you highlighted utilizing those keywords in your resume. It's so very important. Let's dive into some of the questions that we have from you all. So our first question we have is from Lynn, and Lynn has heard that she really needs to keep her skills relevant. So where should she start, and which skills should she highlight and try to keep relevant?
Yeah, that's a really good question because depending on the profession you're in, the skills landscape is changing rapidly. So a couple of things. First, definitely do your research. It's really important so with regard to the profession that you're in or one that you want to go into, start scouring those job listings. See what the skills, how the skills are listed in those job listings, and then ask people in your network or people that you know through your network who might have those, be in those industries, what those skills actually mean and where you might acquire them. Also, if you're a member of a professional association, you can reach out to them to see what skills are sort of emerging on the horizon of your profession. And then also, I would actually talk to a recruiter. Honestly, you can go to your HR department, and I'm sure if you're in a big organization, usually there's someone in charge of talent acquisition. They can help you with that, or even just a headhunter. So go right to the source and find out what recruiters are looking for.
Excellent. And in line with looking for what recruiters are looking for and age-proofing your resume and making those matches, let's watch that short video on how you can age-proof your resume.
As an experienced worker, you have years of expertise and developed skills to offer. Unfortunately, age-related discrimination still exists in some workplaces. However, there are steps you can take to help take your resume from dated to current. First, keep your work experience recent and relevant to the job you're applying for. Only include up to 15 years worth of work experience. Additionally, don't include your graduation or school dates on your resume. This gives recruiters an easy way to calculate your age. Just list your degrees or certificates. On previous resumes, you may have listed a career objective. This is now seen as outdated. Instead, you should simply include your job title, occupation, or the job that you're seeking. Today, every resume must include an email address. However, there's a perception that an AOL or Hotmail address is old school. For a professional email address, use Gmail or iCloud. And be sure that your email address includes some form of your name with a limit on numbers or extra characters. If you have well-maintained social media accounts, you can include these on your resume as well. This can give recruiters a look into your personality and confirm that you're up to date with tech. When including your LinkedIn information on your resume, be sure to customize your LinkedIn URL. Because today's world is so technology-focused, you'll want to show that you're tech-savvy. Highlight computer or software skills in your resume, and if you can, discuss how you use that software. Age-proofing and updating your resume can increase your confidence while showcasing your relevant skills in today's work environment.
Excellent. I hope you all enjoyed that video. It echoed the sentiments that Heather shared with us earlier. I want to go back to answering questions that you all have. I have a question from Robert, and I'll have you answer this for us, Lori. He says he doesn't include his dates of education on his resume. However, he does have a photo of himself on LinkedIn. Does that put him at risk for age discrimination?
Well, unfortunately, the short answer is yes. However, I believe the disadvantages of leaving a photo off your LinkedIn profile probably outweigh the risk of discrimination. So I would say the better course is to include the photo on your LinkedIn profile, but to make sure it's a professional photo and that the rest of your LinkedIn profile is strong.
Excellent, thank you. We have another question from an attendee. Heather, I think this is going to be right up your alley. I've heard that this is true, but maybe you can echo that sentiment. Is volunteering a good way to get your foot in the door with potential employers?
Yes, actually, it is. And if not that employer that you're volunteering for, then another employer. So volunteering is a great way to stay active if you're currently out of work and in the job search. It's a great way actually to acquire new skills. If you're providing free labor to an organization, they're going to be extremely grateful, but also you're going to be able to acquire new skills. So for example, our AARP Connecticut State Office Director used this tactic to get a new job, and she decided to serve as the press officer for a small local organization she knew. And what that did was because she was the author of all the press releases, it got her name out and made her current. So that was something that's a way she leveraged volunteering. But another way, of course, that volunteering can help is that it just increases your network. It's true that still most jobs are procured through networking, and so volunteering just increases that, and especially in the business or the industry that you want to go into.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing that testimonial on how it actually worked for someone. How about competing against younger job seekers? Stephanie wants to know, she has more than 25 years of experience. Is that enough to compete?
I can start. I would say that if I were Stephanie, I would not focus on highlighting how many years of experience she has. I think that might put you at risk of age discrimination. There's a lot of employers out there who are a little nervous that an overqualified candidate might not be a good fit. So instead of highlighting the length of your experience, I would focus on the substance of your experience and what valuable skills you would bring to that employer's workplace.
Yeah, I would echo that, and definitely I would play up your soft skills, because in my work here at AARP, I actually talk to a lot of employers, and they say that soft skills are something that they really value and that they're looking for. Definitely also make sure that you convey, if this is true about yourself, that you adapt easily. That's a really important skill that you need to, in today's fast-paced environment, to highlight about yourself. So, and then lastly, I would say if you're in an interview, to definitely be frank about how you're really interested in this particular job for wanting to learn, wanting to stretch. So it's not about necessarily like you've worked for a super long time and now you want to continue moving up the ladder or whatever. So a way to signal to employers that really you're just talking about this job and the skills you bring to this job.
Excellent, which great insights. I have a question from Rosie. She would like to know, where can she find employers who are actually looking to hire workers at her age? And also, how can she find out if those companies are going to treat older employees fairly?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that question. We actually here at AARP have a program called the AARP Employer Pledge Program. And this is a pledge that employers can sign that publicly states that they value older workers and that they are committed to hiring across the age span. So we have over 500 employers have signed this pledge, which is great. And we also have a job board where the employer pledge signers can post their jobs. So check both of those things out. The job board is at aarp.org/jobs, and the list of employers is at aarp.org/employer-pledge.
And I would add, as to the second part of that question, that a simple internet search should reveal any sort of high-profile age discrimination cases against an employer. And then also websites such as Glassdoor and similar ones can provide some good insights as to employees' experiences at those companies. And of course, the best advice is from friends and colleagues who might work at that employer. And I would ask them, do they believe workers of all ages are treated with respect and fairly there? And that should give you some pretty good insights.
Wonderful. I think you've given us all some homework that we can do on employers we're going to apply for. Thank you for sharing.
And Janae, just one thing to add too on that. If an employer has a publicly available diversity and inclusion statement or policy that they have publicly available, that's a good thing to review. If age is included explicitly in their diversity and inclusion policy, then there's a good chance that from the leadership down, they seek to create an atmosphere of inclusion for all ages.
Excellent. That's something valuable to look for. Heather, how do you feel about social media sites? We know that LinkedIn is a great tool, but what about Facebook and Twitter? Can you also use these to connect with colleagues?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, for sure. We talk about this concept of social proof a lot, which is that when you're applying for jobs or even just in your professional profile, you want to make sure that you have a presence on some social media sites. They can be curated, With Facebook, you can follow companies. Companies have started to create profiles on Facebook where they can communicate with their existing employee base or with candidates. They'll often post jobs there. It's PR for them. They might show pictures of the charity work that they're doing as an organization. So you can follow those organizations, and then their posts will show up in your feed. Twitter is a great place to have a presence. I always say that being on Twitter is like eavesdropping on the largest cocktail party conversation in the world, because there's just every kind of conversation going on Twitter. So look for the professional ones that you want to join, follow those folks. Add to the conversation, and you can learn a lot that way. And the last thing I would say is certainly with regard to your social media presence, you want to maintain a personable but still professional presence. So check out all of the privacy settings on Facebook. You can share certain things and hide certain things. It's perfectly fine to post pictures of your trips, but stay away from controversial topics like politics, and don't trash your former boss. It's very important.
Wonderful insights. Thank you. Let's continue with your questions. don't forget, you can ask a question at any time. Just type it in the Q&A box. Let's see what question we have next. I have one from Phyllis this evening, ladies. What should you do if you think you are a victim of age discrimination at work?
I think I'll take that one. I always tell people to keep a journal or a diary and to write down any sort of age-related comments or other evidence of discrimination, like being passed over for a training or a promotion where a younger worker who you think you are as qualified or more qualified for gets that opportunity. So keep track of who said things, when they said it, who else might have heard them say that. Then you can always go to your HR department to express your concerns about age discrimination. But if that's not effective or you don't think it would be effective, then you should consider filing a charge with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. That's the EEOC. That's the federal agency that enforces the Age Discrimination in Employment Act, which is the federal statute that prohibits discrimination against people 40 and over. And by keeping that diary with the dates and the names, you basically have the notes you need to file an effective, informative charge with the EEOC.
Excellent, thank you. Lori, I'll direct this question at you and for you, Heather, as well. Susan wants to know, should we remove traces of age from your resume by leaving off earlier employment details, your date of graduation, your date of when you attended college, things of this nature? How should you mitigate this on your resume?
Definitely all of the things that, Susan, that you said. So for one thing, we usually generally say to put the last 10 to 15 years of job experience on your resume. However, if you have experience that's farther back than that, that's specifically relevant to a job that you're applying for, you can switch to a functional resume, which is less chronological and more skills-based. So that's a way to bring in those skills if they're older than that 10 to 15 years. Definitely take off dates of graduation and the other things you mentioned. So yeah, you're right on the money, actually. That's what you should do.
Yeah, and I don't disagree. I mean, Heather's right on the money. And it's unfortunate that we have to do it, but age discrimination is alive and well, and those are some of the best ways to protect yourself from it.
You know, and thoughts of age discrimination being alive and well now, Lucy has a question. What do you do if you've already been pushed out of a position that you held for 30 plus years, and now potential employers, she feels like, are only looking at her age?
Well, that's a tough one. And I mean, I think we just go back to some of the advice we've been giving all night, is that, again, to leave off all of the dates and age-related information on your resume and on your social media profiles. I think there's a lot of enlightened employers out there, and eventually you're going to find something. And that's unfortunate that she went through what she did after getting forced out after 30 years.
Yeah, those are heartbreaking stories. And however, go to our job board, because the employers that post on our job board are definitely looking for older workers. They're not just looking for older workers, obviously, but the reason they post on our job board is because they really value the things that older workers bring to the table. So definitely check that out. That's at aarp.org/jobs.
Excellent. How about the interview process? Janine has a question. She says, during her in-person interview, her age is evidently obvious. So what's the best way to ensure an interviewer that she is looking for long-term employment? She's not looking for something that's short-term, and she's planning to retire within, a few years.
I think the best way I think there are sort of two things you can do. The first is to have a story that really resonates with the truth of your situation, and practice that. So you might say, I'm really interested in this profession. Let's say for this example, it's a new one, and you say, I'm really passionate about this type of work, and I'm in it for the long haul, and excuse me. So definitely have that kind of story about why you're looking for this specific job. And then the other thing I would do is to just make sure that I think I said this before, but portray yourself as adaptable, as a lifelong learner, as someone who looks for new challenges. So those things will help. And Laura, I'm not sure if you have other tips.
No, I just would agree with Heather. That is one of the most common stereotypes about older workers, is that they're not going to stay long, that they're just sort of biding their time until retirement. So, I mean, by knowing that that might be in the back of an employer's head and addressing it without calling them out for potentially holding that stereotype, but addressing it by some of the strategies Heather went over, is great. To basically tell them how interested you are in this position and how excited you would be to get it, and how you think you would bring a lot of value and skills to that position.
Excellent.
Yeah, and I would actually add that I hope this is encouraging. But when I talk with employers, one of the things myths I debunk is this one. Mm-hmm. So you may not want to quote this, but the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that workers over 50 tend to stay longer in their positions than younger workers, which makes sense because they're usually at a more stable point. So just for you to know, we definitely are out there on that front as well, talking to employers about and debunking these myths about older workers.
Great.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. I think this is going to play well into our attendee Molly's question. Molly is experienced in customer service. She has many years of experience. She's worked as a designer in the retail industry, but now she's considering transitioning and working from home, utilizing her people skills. So do you have any suggestions on how she can find employers that do hire older people? Maybe how she can navigate the job board that AARP has to offer?
Sure. Yeah, we have a number of employers who offer work from home opportunities, and a lot of them are heavily customer service centric. So definitely check that out. I would say too that I guess I would just say look on our job board, because specifically a lot of employers come to us looking for workers who want to work from home and want to do sort of part-time, and so check out our job board.
Excellent. Wonderful. Teresa is having a good experience. She has a resume out there. It's getting good responses. Phone screenings are getting her interviews. However, her appearance is, professional. It's up to date. But several interviews start off with probing questions, and they're asking if she's ever worked with X organization. And when her resume lists 12 plus organizations and she has professional certifications, how does she really speak up her skills and her ongoing activities? Like, how do you fight ageism?
Well, I definitely think it's great to have all of those certifications, but perhaps you can narrow down the ones that are specifically relevant to the jobs you're looking for. It's really, it's exhausting, but important to remember that you really have to tailor not only your resume and your cover letter, but even the things you bring up in an interview to that specific job. So I would say look to maybe narrow so that you can pull out and highlight the most relevant things.
Yeah, and I would say, like, if some of the questions are suggesting that they have concerns about her age, going back to what I said before, understanding that they might be concerned about how long she might stay, or whether or not she's adaptable and flexible. So sort of kind of read between the lines, and if they seem to be concerned about those issues, then address them head on in the interview.
Wonderful. In line of your thought of being adaptable and flexible, Penny has 20 years as an educator, but she wants to see how she can transfer that and her master's degree to other types of employment.
So that's a great question. I love these kind of questions because I don't think there's a single blueprint, but the first thing to do would be to look at jobs that are adjacent to or that touch the job that you've had. So for example, I know you're a teacher, so this is your question, but like if you're a truck driver and you want to stop, maybe you want to get out of the physicality of that work, then you might become a dispatcher. So that's related to the job you've had. So for a teacher, I would think you might want to look into corporate training and other things like that. But once you fix on that, then you want to start doing your research, finding people in your network that have those types of jobs, just sort of sitting with them and understanding the day-to-day lingo of that job. Those are things you can do to start to transition your thinking and then to help you, again, start tailoring your resume. And then the last thing to do would be to look for certifications that are specific to the jobs that you're interested in.
Excellent. Now, Angela's question deals with gaps in resume. She has been out of the job market for 7 years. How does she explain that gap?
Well, this is a question we get a lot, and I, again, always like to say that it's best to tell the truth in a way that is very polished and that brings your personality into it. So, for example, if you've been out of the workforce for 7 years for a care relationship, like either for children or for elders, then definitely say that and be proud of that. I mean, that's something that we should value as a society. So figuring out a way to explain the gap is really important, and not being ashamed of it. I mean, if you were independently wealthy, you might take time off to write a novel. So, gaps in and of themselves are not bad. I think it's the way you think about them and then convey that to the employer that matters.
Wonderful. I think that's going to flow well into a question from Perry. Perry decided to work outside of the home for more than 18 years and has extensive volunteer experience. So how should they approach listing their experience on their resume?
You can list your volunteer experience the same way that you would list paid work. You just list it as a position, and for example, if you've been like the head of Sunday school curriculum at your church, you can list that. So I would just say, simple answer, just list it the way you list jobs.
Wonderful.
Paid work.
Excellent. Now, Randy would like to know about age-proofing a resume and how to do that online. Oftentimes you have to apply for positions with online applications. So how do you age-proof with your graduation dates and your work experience when it's asking for you to list that time?
I can start with that. I mean, that's a real concern for AARP and for me as an attorney for AARP. We recognize that concern, and it's frustrating because we tell you to leave your dates off, but some of these online applications, you cannot leave that blank and get to the next field. It's like leaving your zip code off your Amazon order. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I would, before turning it over to Heather, we always say, whatever you do, do not lie on an online application, because it's always going to come back to haunt you. So be honest. If you can leave it blank, I'm not even sure if that's a good idea, because it might be considered an incomplete application. So I would say, at least be honest, and it is something that we as an association are concerned about and looking into.
Yes, and I know that this actually, this may contradict what Lori's saying, so if it's so, I apologize, but you may be able to put 9999 in that field.
Nope, that's correct. I've heard that.
Yeah, so it depends. Like sometimes that'll get you through, but it could potentially backfire if they're...
Right, it might be the same as leaving it blank, so I'm not sure.
So I think you have to just put it in.
Right.
Well, thank you for your insights and thank you for your questions, but unfortunately we're out of time this evening. So let's take a look at some free resources. Our first is AARP Learn at 50 Plus Work and Jobs. You can find that at aarp.org/job search. Another is AARP Work and Jobs at aarp.org/work. Our AARP job board we referenced can be found at aarp.org/jobs. And as Heather mentioned, our AARP Employer Pledge Program can be found at aarp.org/employer pledge. Heather and Lori, do you have any final tips for our guest?
Yes, I think tonight I would like to offer the tip of making sure you have a support network. That's a very important thing if you are either looking for a job and have been dispirited by that, or just it's always good to have a support network of people who are in a similar situation to you. You can vent, you can trade ideas, you can alert each other about job postings that you've heard that might be good for someone in your network. So definitely make sure that you maintain a good support network.
And I think I would add that as the attorney, my final thought is you are your own best defense against age discrimination. And by that, I mean, don't give an employer a reason to discriminate against you. Keep your skills and knowledge up to date. Be a lifelong learner, but also understand your rights under the Age Discrimination and Employment Act and know what steps to take if you believe they've been violated.
Excellent. As a reminder, you can access all of the links and content mentioned this evening by clicking on the resources icon. There you'll find links to interactive videos and other helpful tips and tools to help you age-proof your career. Please make sure you take a few minutes to complete our survey. It will automatically appear on your screen in just a moment. We hope that you'll join us this Thursday, March 29th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for part 2 of this conversation, where we'll continue to answer your questions and discuss how you can age-proof your career through networking, interviewing, building and leveraging a support network, staying confident, relevant, and more. A huge thank you to both you, Lori and Heather, for joining us this evening. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And to our audience, thank you and have a great evening.